You hear developers say, I'm delivering 5,000 units this year, or maybe production builders do it. 3,200 units is their goal. It is not a unit, it's a home. It's where somebody raises their family. It's where somebody retires. It's where somebody lives life. And I refuse to call it a unit. And I don't know whoever came up with that, but they need to stop calling it that.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Hey there, my friend. I'm going to share with you a story about a lobster. I know what you're thinking, Michael, lobster, construction, what do they have to do with one another? But hear me out on this. As a lobster grows, as it gets bigger within its shell, it experiences pressure. That's the trigger point for the lobster to realize this thing's too tight. And if I want to continue to grow, I have to shed this shell, which is making me vulnerable, to then develop the next shell so I can get bigger. In this week's episode, I'm joined by not a lobster, but a gentleman by the name of Matthew Reibenstein. And he's the Chief Strategy Officer at Storybuilt Homes, the former founder of Royal Design Build, an award-winning builder, engineer, cowboy, and someone who has discovered that surviving success sometimes requires reinventing yourself, getting outside of that shell. After 15 years of building one company, Matthew faced the difficulty, the reality that the market was changing. Production builders were moving into his market, and standing still, remaining inside that shell, was not an option. So here are some of the things that we talked about in this interview. Why he walked away from engineering and chose building instead. The uncomfortable decision to merge after 15 years of building his own company. How custom builders survive when production builders move into their backyard. What COVID taught builders about risk, resilience, and survival. Why great builders are really professional problem solvers. Leadership, faith, servant mentality, and learning when to lead versus when to follow, and so much more. And speaking of so much more, pretty pleased with the click of your mouse. Hit subscribe, like, and share so our podcast can get out into the ether for more builders like you to experience. Simple click of your mouse, pretty please, subscribe, like, and share. And without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Matthew. I know you're going to enjoy it. Matthew, my friend, I want to say that I'm excited to have you on today's call, and I truly am, because you are the consummate builder. You've done custom. I think you've done a bit of spec. You've gone from starting your own company. Now you're in a monster company. So for builders that are dialing in, it's like you've been there, you've done it all. On top of that, I mean, you're a philanthropist. You've given back to the community by being involved with the National Association of Home Builders. So you've served on governance. You won all kinds of honking awards, and you're a cowboy. What else is there to add to this? Maybe you're planning to go to space. That would be the ultimate
That sounds
finisher on this interview. But welcome to the call, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So when people say get off your high horse, usually they say that in a derogatory manner. But in your case, yeah, you do ride tall. And I can say with great respect, man, get off your high horse. And I'm glad to have you here. So let's rewind. Give the audience just a little bit of a backstory. Let's call it the elevator speech. Who you are, where you build, average builds per year, and give us a price point. Just a little bit of a background.
First, we'll start. I'm actually a civil engineer by degree. I got into that world. I love land development. I love that side of civil engineering. Thought that's where I would be. I spent several years doing that. And in and out of that, I was working with general contractors. I was in the trailers with them a lot. And it came after a football game, a weekend. I'm an Aggie grad. So I came after a college weekend, a big game. And I sat down in my office on that Monday and I started talking about it. And everybody, they didn't even watch the game. And I was like, hey, wait, that was a big game. Y'all didn't even see it. Well, I'm dealing with a bunch of engineers and draftsmen. And anyway, it's not their cup of tea. And next thing you know, I remember I go home and I tell my wife, those aren't my people. I do better in the job sites. I do better in the trailers. I do better with the foremans. I do better there. That's more my space. And I really, truly enjoyed construction. I had a small background in it during college. I worked for a development company and a builder. And so I did have some knowledge behind it, and pretty much jumped right back into the building world and have built this up for the last 16 years. And everywhere from 10 to 20 something homes a year, all custom. And sometimes we'll do some, like you said, we'll do some specs. And a lot of times those specs, though, I'm trying out either new products, maybe I'm trying out new trades. Sometimes I just want to play. I mean, as a builder, the fun of what we get to do sometimes is take a piece of paper and turning into something that somebody's going to enjoy and raise their family in. When you only build custom, as much fun as that is, you're building what the homeowner, what that customer wants. So specs are a great opportunity for us to go in there and kind of flex our muscles and try something new and a lot of fun. So over the years, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of custom homes we've built. I've got a great team of people, and even with our most recent merger, they all came with me. So it's been a great ride. I can't say I take a lot of the credit because I'm just a really small part of this team, even though at the end of the day, I may have the final say so. But that's really my background is now it's kind of turning into more of I kind of oversee all the roles. I'm no longer in the field as much. Sometimes I miss it. There are times I miss it unless it's 100 degrees outside. But outside of that, I do try to get on those job sites and really work on that customer relationship side.
Okay, help me connect the dots there. So at one time in your life, you're holding a slide rule and you traded that in for a hammer. What was what was it, a calling? Did you know I wanted to be a builder? How did that
Yeah,
actually come to be?
I have actually, funny enough, I mean, builders themselves, we all know the truth behind it is that as a quote custom builder, we're very rarely self-performing the work now. 20, 30 years ago, 20, 30 plus years ago, that was obviously a big thing. The builder carried a hammer, the builder had a tool belt on. Now, a builder truly is the guy who is managing the job sites, orchestrating the chaos. But for me as an engineer, I'll tell you why I think that it fits so well is engineers solve problems and we're given a bunch of variables and you go make something that fits all the problem, that fits all the variables to solve the problem. So when you come to me, you've got a budget constraint, and usually number one. Number two is you're building in a neighborhood that will have constraints as far as deed restrictions and what they'll allow to be built, what they won't, all those kinds of things. Your size, the family that's going to be living in there, what you need it to look like, so on and so forth. Maybe you have a drainage challenge. Maybe you have a neighbor next door we don't want to look at. There's all these constraints. It's a big puzzle. And my job is to either myself or with my team take all those constraints and variables and solve the problem. And the problem is we're going to build you a beautiful home that you love, that your family can enjoy, that fits your budget, that works in that neighborhood, that blah, 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 blah. Right. And so that's a successful build. And so that's how I'm gauging, my success rate. But ultimately that is an engineer. I mean, that's what we do is solve the problem.
So this would have been Royal Design. That was the initial company that
Yes, sir.
okay. So I'm looking at this almost like you've assembled a band.
Mhm.
You're the Eagles in essence. So you've got the vision, you're the leader of the band. How did you assemble all the other people to come together to be part of this company?
Like any business, you're going to have the ups and downs. I mean, you're going to go through a couple, but I have been very blessed. The very first person that I ever hired, she's sitting about 3 offices over from me right now. Wonderful lady. She does all our selections. So she's our selections manager. She has an interior design degree. I remember, funny enough, when I was running those job sites and I had an electrician say, Matt, you're running yourself thin. You're on every job site. You're trying to be a sales guy. You're trying to this, you're trying to that. And he said, you're never going to be able to grow. And this is coming from an electrician. You're never going to be able to grow for as long as you can only do 4 or 5 homes at a time, because that's about the max you can handle. And he wasn't wrong. So I thought, okay, I'll go learn how to hire somebody. Well, that's a side of engineering that we aren't really given. We aren't given those tools to run a business. And so I remember hiring Lauren. And funny enough, the very first day, she goes, what do you want me to do? I said, sit there and just wait until I find something for you to do. I didn't know what to do. Crazy enough, she's still here today, 16 years later. I have another one right behind it named Sherry. She came in. And so through the years, you're going to have your ebbs and flows, right? And the hope is that not only do they come in and learn something, if they're going to leave, if you can't retain them forever and ever, amen, then you hope that they've grown from that and you've made them better. Because ultimately, if I'm doing that for somebody else, then somebody else is doing that for one of my next one. And let's face it, you're right. It's a band. There are moments where there's stresses and there's moments where we're high-fiving. And, one of my big things is we win as a team and we lose as a team. And I think everything has to have that team mentality. There's a buy-in there. But certainly that is probably one of the more challenging parts of running a business is the business side. The building a home is the easy part.
You were doing that for 10 years or 15 years under that
Oh,
banner.
15. Yeah, 15 on my on the World Design Build.
So if I were to ask you, what would be your swan song when you look back during that part? Let's call it that chapter of your life. Is there any one particular build that just really stands out, that galvanized everything that you hoped building would be?
Oh gosh, I've had so many. I will say the ones that get me the most is when probably a family moves in and as a custom builder, you don't just build their home. I'd love to think that it's just that simple. I get to know their dog. I get to know their situation, their story. I get to be there on the design side, on the plans when they talk about how they want their rooms to interact with each other, or maybe they want the kitchen here because of X, Y, and Z. There's a reason they're designing it. There's a reason they're moving. 99% of the time they're happy with the home they have. Heck, they might not be moving more than 5 miles away because they don't want to change school districts or whatever. But they're building this home because they have an opportunity to build something. And it's so fun to be a part of the design side. And then when they move into the home, you check in 6 months or a year later, and they're loving the house. Everything that they went through, the headaches, the year of planning and construction, and it's all worth it. There's a few that definitely come to mind that will always stand out. One recently was a person that retired. They were coming from Colorado. Their family lives in Houston, and we got to build their quote retirement home, and here on Lake Conroe. And I mean, it's just special. Like his dream was to have a boat on the water, and it's neat. Well, here we are, summertime, and he's got a boat on the water, and
Yeah.
I love being that I'm a small part of that.
I guess by default, you have to be intimate with your customers because they're sharing with you their dream and you have to interpret that. Is there anything that you do to set the expectations? Because people are thinking, I thought green, you built red. How do you, I guess, mitigate that at the very get go? So you're eliminating turbulence in essence. Do you have any kind of formula, a checklist to stop that like right in its tracks?
Oh, of course, of course. I've got over the years, as a team roper, and I'll relate this to a team roper. One of my biggest misses in life. I train with a guy. He's a professional roper, and I went to a weekend event. I was first high callback, which means you're sitting at first place going into the last round. And basically, all I needed to do was come out and catch those horns. I'm a header, and I missed, and I flat missed. My heart rate was through the roof. I was excited. I was nervous, and I've never really been in that situation with 100+ teams, and I've got an opportunity to win some good money. And that one throw was a $5,000 throw. And when you're an amateur guy, these guys go out and win 20, 30,000. But gosh, I had a chance to win 5,000 with one throw, and I miss it. And I'll never forget on the way home, I called my trainer friend and told him what was going on. And he said, well, and I was waiting for him to make fun of me. He says, well, you win or you learn. That little mantra, you win or you learn, has stuck with me through so much of business. It's stuck with me through so much of life, as a dad, as a husband. It really does. You'd be shocked to know that daily I kind of get this reminder, you win or you learn. And so with home building, same thing. Some homes just go great and they're fun, they're exciting, they're great. Then you have the other ones, right? Those are the 20% or 10%, however many you want to come up with. That just didn't, it was pulling teeth. Maybe they didn't like the process. Maybe they weren't good at picking things out. Maybe their style of communication frustrated you, or vice versa for that matter. I don't love to text. I'd rather talk. So when I have a homeowner that's a texter, it's a little bit tougher for me just because I know that's the way of the world. And I like a more intimate relationship with my homeowners. And so I feel sometimes texting can be cold, but that's just me. Doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means I don't do it as well as others. All that to be said, you win or you learn. And so with each home, you learn something. Even in my world, when you do win, you still learn something. So yes, we have created a formula to basically at the beginning, kind of a cheat sheet, helps get their mind going. One of the things we like to start with is a very simple question. Tell me about your day. Who wakes up first? What do you do when you wake up? Do you go check emails first? Do you sit in a quiet room? Do you turn all the lights on? Are you the person like me? Like when I hit the ground, I'm running. We're moving. My wife is the sleeper of the group. And guess what? If I design my house where a lot of the master bedrooms will have the doors that go from the bathroom to the bedroom, well, I wake up 2 hours before her. So if that was the case, I would be flooding it with light and sound and everything. So we designed our home to have a separate area between the two, a little sitting area. And so when I'm working with my homeowners, that's one of my big questions. Tell me about your day. When you come home, who comes home? Do you cook when you get home? Is that a family activity? Because when I know what you're looking for, what your day looks like, I'm a much better person to build your home because I'm going to be able to help you walk through how we plan this out appropriately. Because it's not really just about the building itself, the cabinets and the countertops, while that's always fun and we all look at magazines. It's the livability that really makes this thing cool. Because let's face it, I can build a really, really cool house and you can move in and go, hell, the kitchen's way over there. My bedroom's over here and I hate it. The next person walks in and goes, well, when I wake up in the morning, she's got the lights on, it's blaring in my face and I can't stand it. I mean, it can be a gorgeous home, but it may not work for you. So what I'd rather do is make the home work for you, then we'll make it pretty.
This may not be a fair question because you're doing custom, but if I'm thinking spec, is there, I want to call it buyer behavior or expectations. So when you started way back, so you've been in this, so 15, 10, 25 years, fair to say
Yeah,
about that?
almost. And from where I kind of started. Yeah,
Man, quarter of a century. I have to get you
I
a
know.
belt buckle that
Don't say
says
it that
quarter of a
way.
century. But
You
looking
just made me feel
back,
old. Thanks.
I feel old when I get up in the morning and there's parts still in bed and I'm downstairs. That's when you know you're old. 25 years back, looking at what buyers wanted back then and looking at what you're delivering now, do you see a difference in what the demands are? Like, I guess, yeah, demands. Let's leave it at that. What the demands or trends are for today's buyer versus when you start.
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, life changes, right? That's what it's all about. But, the needs, the wants don't change. I know for me, one of the things I've always prided myself in personally is I say I'm a custom builder. And what that means is we can build a 1,600 square foot custom home and I can build a 16,000 square foot custom home. I've done both. And I know a lot of people go, oh my gosh, a custom builder, you're expensive and you build big homes. And that is something I've tried to get our industry to kind of subdue a little bit because me personally, I don't feel that way. I have built no lie, I won't tell you her name since we're on a podcast, but a lady who was a widow and she wanted a 2-bedroom, 1,600 square foot home on her 1 acre lot and just wanted to live her happy life. She didn't have a lot of friends and family here. Her husband passed on and she came to me one day and said, this builder gave me this price. I'm looking at the house plan. I'm like, there's no way. And so I started working with her a little bit. And I mean, she was the sweetest lady on planet Earth. And she said, will you build something that small? And I thought it was crazy that she even asked that question after we'd already met several times. It ended up being just an absolute fun build. She had her family was from England. And so she had some little things that we ended up putting in the house that she brought to us and really made it her own house. That house will never get built again. That's a custom home to me. And so I do think a lot of times people gravitate to the wrong understanding or misunderstanding, if you will, of custom builders. But the needs have changed. Yeah, we've probably got a little more on edge when it comes to the technology side. Certainly the technology of our homes has changed tremendously. The energy efficiency side has changed tremendously in that 20 years. So we have seen those changes. But at the end of the day, a home is a home and trends and styles change and they adapt and people move on. And the fun thing is now we're at a stage where people call us that we built a house 10, 15 plus years ago, and they want me to remodel it now. And you talk about making yourself feel old. You go into a house that you built 15 years ago, and I'm like, damn, we put that cabinet in. Who put that in here? We're our worst critics.
Linoleum floors, where did that
Yeah.
come from? Yeah, I get, yeah. So life was fairly sweet, at that point. You're doing royal design. What was it that prompted you to then? So was it a merger, an acquisition? How did this next chapter of your life evolve?
It was a merger, and funny enough, so we are in Montgomery, Texas. So that is the Conroe Montgomery area is on the northwest quadrant of Houston. And for the longest time, it's, for about 30, 40 miles outside of Houston. And for the longest time, it was kind of no man's land. It was custom builders only. We did not have production builders in our backyard. Now that's all we have. And the secret is out. The cat's out of the bag. Everybody's coming to Montgomery, Texas, and they came they're up 249 to Tomball, Magnolia, and we are in the crosshairs, as everybody said it. And so for me, it was the realization of going, you're going to have some volume to compete to get in some of these neighborhoods. And volume was never my big game. Customer experience was my big game. You got to evolve, just like you just asked about the homeowners and how they changed. And I think businesses, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I don't mean growing in revenue. Maybe if you're just not learning, you're kind of dying. If you're building the house and doing your business the same that you did 10, 20 years ago, people change. You got to learn to adapt. So for me, I'd actually looked at buying, and as you related to, I'm very big in the tech association. I'm a life director for Tech Association of Builders. I served as the president of the Greater Houston Builder Association. So I've got great connections. And I started going to these custom builder friends of mine going, guys, look, if we don't normalize our prices a little bit better And if we can't do certain things like the production guys, then we're going to be out of a job. And it was just an honest realization. What they can, because of the volume they're doing, they're getting better deals. So I said, what if we created like a local buyers group for custom builders? What if we went together? Well, Storybuilt Homes was one of the builders that I'd went to. And in several meetings, I started realizing the concept was great. The execution of that idea was not. And what I mean by that is everybody like me who's got 10 plus year relationships with guys, I didn't want to quite give you my mason, but I'll give you my other guy. And I didn't want to quite give you maybe you didn't want to give me your framer, but you give me your drywall because he was your B guy. I think we were giving everybody who was putting into that pool of ideas was giving us our B guy, not their A guy. And so it only works if everybody's willing to pony up and give the best, right? And so in those meetings, me and Chastity hit it off. We've known each other for several years, and we were in San Antonio, ironically enough, at a builders meeting. And I said, "Hey, what if we just had a meeting, you and I, about how because we are 3 miles apart down the road." And on one of the social media posts, it was, "Hey, I'm moving to Montgomery. Can somebody recommend a builder that they like?" And it was Story Built Homes, Rural Design Build, Story Built Homes, Rural Design Build. The whole way down the page, it was just basically us and them. And I joked with my wife. I said, "Dadgummit," I said, "there's Chastity. They're taking my jobs now." And so I called her and gave her a little heckle. I was like, "Look, you stay away from my people." And we just hit it off. And I started realizing our ideas were very much the same. Our philosophies on customer service were the same. Our attention to detail was very harmonized. And there was a day that I said something about, we should just do this together because they have much better marketing than I do. Hands down, they are worlds apart. I look, and it's not fair. I'm a rough cowboy looking dude. I don't look good on social media with my little TikToks because I'm not wearing a dress and I'm not pretty like the rest of them. So, all these people are getting all these likes and views because they're pretty. Well, I'm not. I'm pretty, just what you see is what you get. And I thought, man, if we could blend my background and my construction experience with their marketing and their stuff, I mean, we could be a builder. We could be a good builder here. And that idea just evolved over about a year's period, and one thing led to another. And so we decided to technically merge the teams and brought all but one over and moved into offices last August together.
I got to say, I'm kind of glad that you feel uncomfortable wearing a dress on social media because that would have been a transition to a whole different career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A
Yeah.
blouse. Is that what they call these? A blouse? I don't wear a blouse real well. What?
Oh,
Hey,
man.
listen, why is it that women can wear a man's shirt and we go, wow, that's beautiful. Oh, man, we get excited. But could you imagine if dudes were walking around wearing a women's blouse? We'd be in trouble.
I don't have to imagine it because I see it in downtown Toronto already. So, yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that my dinner's been spoiled, let's go back to this evolution into the next chapter, which is story built homes. I kind of think, have you ever heard the lobster story?
No.
Okay, so when a lobster starts growing and it's got this shell around it, hard shell, and as it grows, it's starting to feel the pain, the constraint of the shell. And so that discomfort is what triggers the lobster to say, hey, I got to shed this skin and I have to build another shell. And at that moment, when it sheds it, it's vulnerable because it no longer has that protective armor. But it's that mechanism of pressure. And without the pressure, it's not going to grow. Did you feel that in your business that the pressure was building? We have to do something, as you said, to be competitive or to be relevant. And then when you did make this marriage, if you will, what were some of the pain points? Because it is like a dance. It is like a marriage. You're getting to know one another. Because I'm trying to look at this from a builder's perspective that wants to scale. What are some of the key indicators that would trigger them to start thinking, aha, maybe it's time for me to shed the skin and
Yeah.
I've got to grow?
Oh, I mean, that's a great analogy, actually. I've never heard that one, but that's exactly what it is. Growth isn't meant to be comfortable. And as a builder, and any builders that are watching that are thinking about how they're going to grow and how they're going to, sustain, that should be a conversation you probably have within yourself. It's not comfortable. Being in business for yourself is not comfortable if we're being completely honest. I mean, anybody's ever had the struggles of payroll and when it rains for 2 months straight and you can't pour a slab and you've got bills to pay and you can't get draws from a custom build or whatever, there's a level of discomfort that you can almost get numb to as a business owner. But this was really just a well thought out plan to go, here's the facts. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be on Montgomery ISD's what's called long range planning committee. And that was a aha moment for me as I sat there in one of our meetings, and apparently somebody locally, they thought I was somebody. They selected 20 local people that were something in business to be part of this thing. And really, I'm just the scapegoat for the board of directors or for the school board. When they go make a decision, I know that's going to go. They're going to say, well, the long range planning committee recommended. Right. Well, eventually you'll find out that I'm on it. I looked at this sheet and we were looking at all the kids in the school districts we have today. Zonda, the research company, has estimated that we will double in student population within 10 years. And that's a scary, scary fact. But when I look at the sheet, there were 17 communities coming into Montgomery ISD's territory, right in my backyard, and all 17 were production builders. And in all 17 of those, I can't, as a custom builder, get in without a large sum of money because you've got to do lot takedowns. You're going to have product on the ground based on an agreement that they have. You're going to have to keep up with the DR Hortons and the Chesmars and the big guys of the world. You're going to have to. And those are all either publicly traded or they have massive amounts of money behind them. And as a smaller custom builder, how do you sustain? Well, you don't. I mean, let's face it, you don't, unless you make some changes, and they may be somewhat uncomfortable. And sure, I knew there'd be growing pains. That's part of any process. You kind of know going into it, but you hope that you've done enough research and due diligence within that to make an educated decision. And it came with a lot of discussions. I'll be honest with you, a lot of discussions. But yeah, the hardest part is going from it's me and my way for the last 15 years to all of a sudden walking into a place where I'm one of three voices or three other voices. It's great because on Thursdays when I go home, I think, well, I didn't have to worry about payroll tonight like I've done for the last 15 years, which, hey, that's a positive. But then you turn around and you got an idea that pops in your head on a Sunday at 2 a.m. because that's what business owners do. We're weird. And all of a sudden you got to run it by people and that's different. So, yeah, pros and cons.
You don't strike me as a guy that suffers from ego. So the question is, now that you've merged and you realize that there's somebody that may have bigger spurs than you, how do you adjust to play together?
I took one out of my own playbook. I say this all the time. We live in a world where a lot of times the word follower has a very negative connotation. And I don't know why that is. There's leaders and there's followers. And I've always said, in order to have good leaders, you have to have good followers. And that has kind of always been something that I've resonated with. But you look at like the military, if the followers didn't follow what the leader asked, people would be dead. It is so critical because the leader might be thinking of a bunch of different things and you're not getting to see all that he's thinking about or getting to deal with. But if he tells you to go left, you go left. Because if you go right, thinking it was the way to go, he already had a plan. Maybe the enemy was supposed to come from the right. And that's why he told you to go left. Right? There's a plan. In order for all the team to win, you have to have a leader and you have to have followers. And in order for our team to win, for the longest, I was a leader and I had to lead my team and they had to follow and they followed well. It doesn't mean they don't get a voice. It doesn't mean that I don't care about them. It doesn't mean that I'm better than them. It just simply the way it needs to work in order to work well. That being said, I also had to learn to be a follower myself. And that is a struggle because when you walk into a new organization and you merge teams and you got different roles, sometimes I'm not a marketing guy, as I alluded to. When somebody tells me, hey, go make sure the houses look like this, this, and this, there's a reason because they're planning on having a photographer there and they're planning on having this going on or open house or whatever. If I don't execute my part of that plan as a follower, then the whole thing crumbles. And so I've actually had to sit back and think to myself, and is this a situation where I'm leading it or am I following? And learning to decipher the two has kind of made me stronger in some ways. So sometimes I do to your point, sometimes I do the spurring and sometimes I'm getting spurred now. And that's okay. I think, man, we live in a world where everybody wants to be top dog. And, I think in order for an organization to survive, you got to have a little bit of both.
I think a good analogy, because I think in pictures, visuals, and I'm thinking of a bluegrass band. And if you've ever watched a bluegrass band or listened to them, you've got key individuals. You've got the banjo, mandolin, a bass player, guitar, sometimes fiddle. So either 4 or 5. And they're all focused on what's the best version of this song that we can do. And then there comes a point where each one of them gets a break. And rather than being rhythm, they're now the lead. So the banjo will get a solo, then they sing, guitar gets a solo. And it seems that that's the happy marriage, that everybody gets to voice if you will, their opinion, their talents, but it's all pulled together to make that song the best it can possibly be. Would that be a good analogy to what you're
Yeah, it's
doing?
a great analogy. Great analogy. 100%.
You should be writing these down, Matthew. You can use
Yeah,
them
I
at the
mean,
next company meeting.
gosh, I'm stealing
More
some
than
of your
just a
ideas.
pretty face,
Thanks.
man. Yeah.
That's free. That's free stuff right there. Appreciate
I
it.
know. I'm ready to call it a day and go home, take a nap. So we've covered the growth part of it. Now, talk to me like I'm 6 here because I'm trying to get my head around what it is to be a custom builder. And so let me just go through this, and then you can point out where I'm getting it wrong. Custom means that you get a phone call, and Bob and Betty Smith want to build a home. Now, they may have already bought a parcel or they've got a lot somewhere, and they say, "Hey, Matthew, we're looking to build something. Can you build our dream home?" Next option is you have land already that you purchased as a company, and then somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, Matthew, we're looking for a home," and you can say, "Oh, well, hot diggity, I already have something in Montgomery."
Mhm.
And then I guess option 3 would be that you become a spec builder and you're building something with the if come that somebody will come along and buy that home. Have I covered all the food groups?
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the building side.
Of those 3, is there one that you prefer over the others, or is it kind of a happy blend of what you're doing now with story built homes?
Oh, I think it's gotta have a happy blend, but if I had it my way, I think I would choose the where you have the land and and you come to us with ideas or you come to us wanting to be, us to be a custom builder. I guess from a business perspective, obviously that's a lot easier, on our end because you're carrying it all. But I guess because I enjoy working with the people, custom builds, they'll have their strengths and weaknesses. The custom builds, like where spec home, you mean? Like I talked about earlier, that's so much fun because you get to do what you want and it's a blast.
Yeah.
But it also has its own challenges because you're having to guess the market. You're having to guess at what somebody else, a future buyer, might want. And because I like a certain thing doesn't mean they're going to like that certain thing. And so, yeah, there's a very much a level of did we pick the right stuff out? Is that buyer going to walk in here and go, I love everything but this, and that's what's keeping them from buying that home. So your anxiety level might be a little bit higher on that one versus when you're working with the homeowner, the anxiety sometimes we get is I joking, especially we're more of a luxury builder. So we tend to build for, I'd say our average clientele is 50 and up. I'd say that's the average is definitely 50s and 60s. A lot of times I go, tell me about your house now because they don't like much change at that point in life. And they tend to gravitate toward back towards what they've had for the last 30 years of their life as they raise kids. And it's so funny because if they show you a picture, you're almost guaranteed that's what they're going to want. And it's how do you work with them to pull them out of their comfort zone a little bit? How do you get them how do you remind them nicely and comfortably this is 2026, not 1986, and that they don't make fluorescent lights anymore? All those kinds of challenges will be there. I guess in some ways, because I tend to like a challenge, I'm going to shoot for that one first. The middle of the road one is we do own some land plays where we have the lots and somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, I would like to build." I guess there's a happy medium there. From a business standpoint, you're just hanging on the lots and that's sometimes good and sometimes bad. It just depends on what market you're in. But I like them all individually, but like anything, I think you gotta have a mix.
How do you manage your capital then when it comes to if you're building lots, that's future. So obviously you're holding on to the land. So now you've got equity or you've got money tied into that. And
Yeah.
if you're doing spec, it's exactly the same thing. So I guess the questions would be number one, what is it that gets Matthew excited about a project that you go, I'm willing to take a risk on this. Let's buy the land we're going to build. When you do that, what is it that you're looking for? And then ultimately, how do you finance that? How do you put it all together?
Unique will always speak to me. I love unique. I like different. It's one of the reasons I like to stay in the custom world because no two houses are the same. I think me personally, I have built in a production environment before, previous to owning my own stuff. And I'm not to say it's not to say there's anything bad about it. It just didn't fit my personality. Building the same 4 or 5 floor plans over and over in the same neighborhood with a different paint color and a different front elevation just isn't my idea of fun building. And that's just me. Mine keeps me up a lot more at night. I have some funny stories. I mean, truly, we know we've done tankless. This is a great one. I've done tankless water heaters for, gosh, at least 8, 10 years as a standard now at this point. But early on, a 50-gallon tank water heater was the norm for a lot of the custom homes we were doing. You usually have 2 in a house. There was one homeowner in particular. We're standing in his shower. Now, we jokingly, the designs back in the early 2000, mid 2010 range, you had a lot of the master bathrooms would have a bathtub in the middle, and you had a walkway going into the shower, and you maybe had a walkway on this side, right? So we went behind the bathtub. That was a very common luxury look. Well, we called the car wash because he had 12 shower heads in this thing. He had the body sprayers, he had the overhead rain shower, and he had the two on the wall. And this particular homeowner, I won't say his name because we're still friends, but I don't get uncomfortable very often, but we sat in there one day and he started telling me about why he needs the shower heads and the way he need. I said, look, buddy, I don't need to know this again. And his poor little wife, she's sweet as ever. She walked out, and I swear I could never look at her the same again after hearing some of those conversations. And, you think you're just a builder. Heck no, you're going to hear everything you need to know about marriages and everything in between. And I reminded him, I said, look, buddy, I don't care. Just tell me where you want the shower heads. I don't need the why. I just need to where. And as I'm laying in bed that night, this is going to sound really bad after that story. I'm laying in bed, I'm thinking about these shower heads, and I'm running the math, and I'm going, wait, if he turns 12 shower heads on, and at the time, they're probably spraying 2 gallons a minute or whatever, I started doing this math, and I'm like, shoot, he's got about 2 minutes of hot water with a 50-gallon tank. And I mean, that light bulb went off, and I'd never done a 12 shower head shower before. And he was my very first phone call the next morning. I said, hey, I was thinking about you this morning about your shower. That didn't start off well when you tell somebody that. I said, look, I'm thinking about these shower heads, buddy. If you have them all on, we got to add a standalone water heater just for your shower. He's like, oh, I'm glad you thought of that. I didn't either. I said, otherwise you're going to be taking a cold shower within 2.5 minutes. And so long story short, we upgraded. We went to a tankless water heater. I think that was one of my first ones to put in back then. And, it became the norm. It was very expensive when it first came out. That technology was expensive. But it's funny because you just lay in bed and you're problem solving. That's all you do. And it's what I know best. And it's what I enjoy, sadly, as my wife will tell you, how many nights she goes to sleep at 11 o'clock midnight and I'm working on a plan or I'm working on something and she gets back up at 5:36 and I'm still up. And it's my personality is once I get zoned in and focused, I enjoy it. And I'd love to tell you some days it's work, but you put an Excel spreadsheet in front of me or a set of plans and I'm in my little happy spot. Give me a couple of cups of coffee and we're rolling. And I've always thought when I lose that luster, when I lose that excitement, I probably want out, but it's not yet.
It just means you're passionate about what you do and you love it. Because
Yeah.
I suffer from the same thing. I'll go to bed, I'm just wiped. I can barely keep my eyes open. And then I'll think of something like an interview that I'm getting ready for, and that's it. I can't sleep. And
Yeah.
so I'm either lying in bed, which I refuse to do because bed's for sleeping, sex, and recovery. Those three. And if I'm not doing one of the three, then I'm downstairs, right? It's that simple, right?
All right. There's another model I'm writing down. You're full of them today.
I'm just gonna get you a T-shirt, man. You can just wear them all at once. Yeah. So you're living, from what I see here at 60,000 feet, you've got the perfect life happening here. Like, you've grown a company, you've got a band of merry men around you. It gets to the point where, we're comfortable enough to expand. You've got 3 kids, you got a lovely wife, I take it. Occasionally you wear a dress. Okay, that's up to you. I gotta believe, let's say 2018, let's rewind it back when basically the world was on fire and everything's melting down and collapsing. Was there a point in your career, and I'll kind of use that as a pinpoint, but was there a point where you just kind of looked into the abyss and you think, shit, what was I thinking? I could have been a civil engineer. I would get a paycheck every week. Why the hell did I commit myself to building? Was there ever that
100%.
moment?
Yep. 2021 to 2022. 100%. I can tell you where it was. Every day of my life, I hated it. And everybody goes, well, that's when building was the best. You're right. I could have walked outside and said, I'm a builder. You didn't even check my credentials and you signed a contract with me. The post-COVID world was a world that I hope we actually never go back to. The frenzy, the real estate frenzy, the fact that you could put a house in the market for 500,000 and somebody come buy it for 600,000. And to think just a few years later, it's not worth a third of that hardly, it's just, it was wild to me. The other thing was because I am so passionate about customer experience and homeowner experience. And let's face it, my family and I, we work, we live, we play. My wife's a teacher here. Our church is here. Everything's here. We're local. And Montgomery, as much as it's growing, it's still that kind of old, it's that town where, especially if you've been in me and you've been involved here for over 15 years, People know you. My wife gets so irritated. We go to dinner on a Friday night and she wants to sometimes go somewhere else because she's like, look, I'm going to remind you, you're not running for mayor. Like, we don't need to talk to every single person in the restaurant. And I said, the hard part is like, well, I built for them and we designed their house and I know them. And, hey, I rope with that guy and our kids play baseball with that guy. And you know people and that's great. The downside is, people. It sucks, because when you didn't do something right, trust me, they all know too. So when 2021 hit, now let's imagine 18 and 19 were glorious years. I loved them actually. Things were normalized. Pricing was normalized. I felt like the world was just running smooth. And then this little thing called COVID hits. And I'm talking, you wrecked our world in a heartbeat. Texas was one of the few states where we were considered, you can thank our Republican state here, we were considered essential workers. So within 4 days of COVID being announced, we had a letter in our hand from the Texas Association of Builders that said, no, we're essential workers. And so we got to go everywhere. So the building didn't stop, but the aftermath of price escalations and cost increases, I mean, lumber, let's look at lumber alone. We went up over 400% in lumber. And if you've ever bid a house out, generally speaking, it's good for 30 days. Your lumber supplier will hold to those prices. I actually had one that said on the bottom of his email, your price quote is only as good until you close the email. And so, we went from a 30-day hold to a 21-day hold to a 10-day hold to a 7-day hold to a tomorrow, the number will be different. And try living in that world where you feel like no matter what you do, every phone call I made for a year was, I'm so sorry I'm having to make this phone call, but the prices have done this, or I can't get this material. Do y'all remember how hard it was to get materials for a while? And they'd call me and go, your guys just aren't working on the job sites. No, ma'am, we have called 16 times. Trust me, it is harder on us right now than ever before. We are trying to find out, but every other builder is building as well. And there's not enough trades for the amount of homes everybody has under construction. And bottom line is we can't get them here. I can't go make them get dressed and get at your house. And I felt like the disappointment. I was constantly disappointing somebody. And I remember wanting out then. It didn't matter about the money. We didn't make a ton of money that year, despite what people think. Builders, we were screwing people. We were not. Look, I have plenty of builder friends, and all of us were saying the same thing. We weren't charging for the increases. We were trying our best to hang on to pricing. We were doing everything we can. Of course, lenders were struggling too, because a house that's normally $600,000 is, overnight $800,000. Well, there's no comps yet. There's no way a lender can lend that amount of money to this person, but I can't not charge them that because that's what it's going to cost me to do it. I think we actually made less money in all those years. I think we actually made less money with a lot more headaches because instead of calling your plumber once or twice, you called 20 times. And instead of calling the homeowner to let them know, here's your weekly update, you were giving them daily updates. That was a struggling point for me. I went home and I have said this and I'll say it again. If we ever hit a post-COVID world again, I'm out. I don't want to go through the headaches and the turmoil and the feeling I had of like, this just isn't worth it anymore. And there was a lot of builders who got out. So the world paints a picture that, everybody made a bunch of money and everybody did great. And I'm not saying people didn't, but it didn't come without its headaches. And unfortunately, I would rather have happy customers than money in my pocket some days.
We're paying for it here, like in the Toronto market, the condo market in particular. Prices were up to like $2,000 a square foot. Like I can't even grasp that, $2,000 a square foot.
No.
And now that everything's adjusted, mortgage rates have doubled. You've got people that bought on spec. So they didn't just buy one condo, they bought two, right? So they would take a mortgage against their mortgage so they could buy a condo.
Oof.
And there were preferred construction rates of about 1.5%. Well, now they're hovering around 5.
Yeah.
And then that 2,000 to 2,200 a square foot has dropped down to about 700. So they're closing on properties that are underwater. And it's pardon my French, it's a shit show. That's the only way you can describe it here.
Yeah,
So,
the backlash isn't worth the gain in the beginning.
yeah, when I think of those times, COVID, but also when the recession hit, there's a number of builders that I interviewed and they get all teary-eyed. And the one that really comes to mind, John C. Jones, he's out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And he was telling me, Michael, I didn't want to get out of bed. I was in the fetal position in the closet. I couldn't come out because he was so underwater. And he said, I was looking at, do we declare bankruptcy? And then we just start all over again because that's what other builders were doing. He said, I couldn't sleep nights if I did that. So I made everybody whole. I had to take out a mortgage against my house to do it. And I'm still $200,000 in debt. Like the bank is calling me on Monday for their 200 grand. And he says it was almost like divine intervention because he had business colleagues that he was working with. If they would do a build, he may work with these two guys if he's doing something on his own, but he had different people that he worked with. And these two knew that he had a commercial development that he didn't really want to sell, but he's thinking, I got to get rid of this. And he said, Michael, divine intervention. I get a phone call on the weekend from these two guys, and they go, John, we know you probably don't want to sell, but if you did, we would be interested. And he sold that thing. And after all the dollars and I's and T's were crossed, it came out to $201,000.
Wow.
And so he was whole. And he just looked up and said, yeah, this was out of my hands. I know that you've got a really strong Christian background and faith. How does that, I don't want to say seep, how does that manifest into your work ethic and the homes that you build?
Oh, that's everything for me. Anybody who knows me, this sits on the front corner of my desk. There's a reason for that. It's the what. And I only have it between me and the door. It's one of my big things. I've had it in every office. One, because I'm a type A personality, first of all, I'll humbly admit that has a lot more to do with how I react to issues. As the boss, quote unquote, they call me boss, El Jefe, whatever. They come in here. Not many people just walk in my office and go, man, I just want to come say hi and how good looking you are today. I mean, nobody does that. They walk in my office because they got a problem and they need me to help solve this thing. And so sometimes my first reaction is not always the easiest. And so between me and that person sits my Bible to remind me of how not to overreact some days. I start my morning. I'm an early riser. So I start my morning with a quiet time with the Lord. And I'm lucky enough to have two big groups that I'm a part of, or one's called Men of the Barn, some Bible studies with local guys that are here, but also most of us are business owners. So funny enough, it's kind of one of those, it's just one of those abilities for me to really share my faith. I've always been very open about my faith. So yeah, 100%. That's what runs a lot of that's my day to day.
I'm envisioning a plaque outside your door saying, you have to say something nice about me before you come in. Like,
I don't think they
you're
listen.
good looking. Where did that even come from? You're good looking.
Even if it had a plaque, I don't think it
Yeah.
would matter.
Yeah. I'll check. That's probably not the Bible. It's a book of beauty tips. It's sitting beside you there. It's got, yeah, nice try, buddy. Nice try. Oh, I don't know where to go from here. You just threw me off my podium here. Let's pivot and talk about, you've done the build. Okay. You've got a quality product that you're putting out. You've got the experience. At what point during that evolution are you thinking, you know what, Michael, it's time that I give back? And I mean, give back at a maybe state level, local level, but I want to be able to help guys that are following behind me and builders that are getting in. I want to share what I've learned. So
Well,
is that a conscious decision that you made, or was something kind of needling at you? How did
I
that come
think
to be?
I think I have a natural servant's heart. I love to help. I'd like to think I'm the guy you call at 2 a.m. when nothing makes sense and you don't know who to call next. Just call me. I'm up. I'll come get you. I'll do whatever I need to do. I've always been that guy that kind of prided myself on a servant's heart. I love giving back. I love working with young builders, especially guys getting into the business. And some of it's because, well, like any business, you learn. And as the years progress, I've made plenty of mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes, and you hope that somebody will listen to you long enough to maybe allow you to help them. One of my number one, and anybody who's made it this far into the podcast, I'm gonna reiterate the why I have a cowboy hat on. So I was born and raised in Houston. That's all I know. Now, if you've ever been to Houston, it's like any other metropolis. I know everybody thinks Texas and they automatically think horses and cowboys and blah, blah, blah. Look, I am one in a million here. Okay. There's not many of us running around. Contrary to what people think, we don't ride horses to school or any of that crap. But I was the kid in elementary school. I played sports growing up, and I wore boots and shorts because it's hot here. It's Houston. And I wore boots and shorts a lot, and nobody liked that. My dad didn't like it. And I would take my tennis shoes and my backpack to play at recess. And I was always a cowboy at heart. I think that was, if you could go back in 40 years ago, most people would say that. Oh, I just remember he always had cowboy boots on, or always had a hat on. I mean, to this day, every weekend you're going to see me. If I'm not in boots and jeans, I pretty much have a cowboy hat and shorts on, and I wear shorts and Crocs, and I wear it proudly, and it doesn't bother me with my cowboy hat on. So that being said, I grew up in that world where that's what I liked. I went to A&M, pretty conservative school. I lived on 3,000 acres. I managed a barn, did all those things. So interestingly enough, when I got into business, I was about 2 or 3 years in. I was struggling to make ends meet, like most young entrepreneurs. And I was at a builder's event, and I ran into a guy out of Houston. Now, mind you, I'm in Montgomery. Okay, so I'm north. But I run into this guy, and I said, "Look, I'm trying to get into this luxury housing market, but I'm building $200,000 houses right now. How do you get into that? Like, how do you break in to that luxury market?" And he looks me up and looks me down and says, "You wear that every day?" I said, "Yes, sir." And I always wear a tucked in dress shirt with my starched jeans and a cowboy hat. And he said, "There's your problem." He's like, "If you're trying to build for doctors and attorneys and high level people, you're gonna have to dress more like them. Nobody wants that." And I was like, "Oh." I mean, idea came up to mind. I was like, "Man, he's right. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just too country bumpkin for most people." So on the way home, I think I stopped at Dillard's. Everybody knows what Dillard's is. I stopped at a mall. I stopped at Kohl's. I think I stopped everywhere, and I got a whole new wardrobe Monday through Friday. And I was wearing, more slacks and more dressy type stuff. I put my cowboy hat up. I wasn't wearing that at all. Anyways, for 2 years, I struggled just the same, if not worse. Monday through Friday, I was one guy. Saturday and Sunday, I was back in my normal get up. And anyways, one particular Saturday, I had started to feel that maybe I just wasn't, this is where I was supposed to be. And I got a phone call from a lady who says, "Hey, you were referred to me, and I'm only in town for one day, but we are moving to this area and I want to meet with some builders. Can you meet with me?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I can, but I'm I'm pretty grungy right now. We've been out mowing and doing some other stuff, but I'm happy to come at least meet you real fast before you go to town." So we did. We had a great meeting. I was boots, jeans, and a cowboy hat. I don't know if we had been doing yard work or riding or whatever we've been doing. And she called me back a week later. I checked in with her. She called me back and she says, "Hey, we decided to go with you. I remember you're the guy I remembered. You wore a cowboy hat. That's how I remembered you." And I just remember thinking, "You chose me because I wore a cowboy hat." And, I mean, I guess if she's meeting with several other builders, that maybe that was the reason she went with me. From that day on, it hit me. I just need to be myself. And so my point to this whole story is whoever's listening to this, be yourself. If you ride a wakeboard boat and you want to show up in sandals and shorts because that's who you are, find the buyer that will appreciate that. The one that won't will never appreciate it. It's okay. You got to lose that one. But find the ones that will appreciate you. And so I went back to wearing my normal Monday through Sunday outfit, which was my boots, jeans, and a dress shirt. And my business, it seemed like after that blossomed, and probably because I was more confident in who I was. My confidence showed at that point. And ever since then, I've kind of been known as the guy who wears the cowboy hat. So as the GHBA, Greater Houston Builder Association president, there are 83 presidents that have pictures on the wall, and I'm the only one in a cowboy hat of the 83 that are up on that wall. And I jokingly say that because people kind of know that about me. It's kind of been my thing. And let's face it, in Texas, the guy who's rolling around in an F-350 with a cowboy hat on, my hopeful client, more than likely has the money if he's got a ranch or cattle or something else. He probably has the ability to build a custom home. At least I like to think that. So it's worked
I
out
can't believe
well.
that in TAB, the Texas Association Builders, that nobody has a hat on, a picture, a president with a hat on.
Well, you got one now.
Man, oh man. I like the expression you said, be yourself. The follow-up to that is be yourself. Everyone else is taken.
Oh, yeah. It's a great one. Oh, gosh. Write
So
it
who else
down.
are you going to be, man?
Write it down.
What am I up to? 5? Okay, that's
Yeah,
it. I'm done.
buddy, you're on a roll. We can do this for another 3 hours. We got a whole book written now.
So your role within the Texas Association Builders, how did that come to be? And what did you do there? And then I'm gonna throw in another part to this. Maybe I should save it, but what are you doing to inspire, I don't want to say younger, it doesn't necessarily have to be younger, but let's say inspire the next generation to step into the trades?
So first of all, my role is, gosh, how do I even get started? I don't even know. I think I started just coming around and like anything in life, as I tell my son, 90% of the world is run by those who just simply show up. And, if you get a seat at the table to listen to a politician or a meeting about some new subdivision regulation or building guidelines or this or that, and you meet somebody who gets to know you and, it just kind of cycles. You're going to have that awkward first year, but as you get more involved, you're going to find that, man, this is kind of my space. I like it. And it's great. Yeah, I was 28 years old when I took my first development loan out. And this is how it sounds crazy to think now. I didn't sleep the entire time I had a loan. My wife will tell you, when you owe that much money to some bank, it's a nerve-wracking thing. But at 28 years old, I jumped the fence. I was coming home from church. I'd seen it a bunch of times, and I just took the chance. I decided to buy my first 50 acres and of development space, and I developed it. I learned how to negotiate. Now, granted, my background in civil engineering certainly helps in the land development side, but I'd never negotiated with a water company. I'd never negotiated with an electrical company. Little old me sitting in this room with 3 or 4 board members telling them how I needed power to my community and how they need to pay for this and I'll pay for this part. And, I'm 28 years old. I have no idea what I'm doing, but you have to sometimes fake it till you make it. And that development went great. I sold out in 18 months. It was a blast. Sometimes it's just taking the chance. I didn't have a whole lot of help with people. I'll say this. I did not have a whole lot of help with people guiding me or whatever. But what I did have is an incredible group of cheerleaders. I had an incredible group of people, mostly my wife, going, babe, you've got this. You can do this. I mean, every day I had a big meeting. She's over there. She is my biggest cheerleader. She may not know anything about power or electric or water or septic systems or anything else, but she knows enough to how to keep me going. I had a great team at the office that when they saw those hard days and those hard meetings, they made sure I had my Diet Coke or they made sure I had something. I mean, they were always there for me. And so while maybe they didn't give me exactly guidance, sometimes that's half the battle. And I think more than ever, we start talking about mental health. We start talking about how fast this world has become, just so crazy. And as a big cowboy, as a guy, we tend to think, oh, well, if I'm struggling, I can't tell anybody. The new thing in Texas Association of Builders and you think Chris Bolio, our current GHBA president, is he's brought on a mental health awareness because our industry is plagued with it. And I do think having your group of people just to hold you up some days is so much more important than people have ever realized. We live in a crappy dog eat dog world at times. And as builders and developers, that is something we deal with. So part of my role in giving back is maybe just being that, just reaching out, seeing if I see somebody younger or somebody new, somebody just getting into this game. How can I help you? What resources do you need? Come alongside of them. We are in competition to a degree, but I do not compete with other builders. My goal, I have a whole phone over here full of builders that I talk to constantly and we share ideas. I wish homeowners knew that. I wish homeowners knew that builders talk and that when I have an issue with a code item, I can text that out or they can do the same to me and we're helping each other. We got to get this together. And my goal is that if he's a better builder, it elevates us and that makes me better. And then if I make him better, and we just keep elevating each other. And I think that is something that I think is never talked about. It's never mentioned. But also we live in and especially the younger ones getting into this business, they think this is all about money. And unfortunately, yes, you go to work for money. There's no doubt about it. But unfortunately, this is about changing lives. This is, and one of my biggest hot buttons, and I apologize if you're listening and you call it units, you can send me an email and get mad now. I do not like calling things units. You hear developers say, I'm delivering 5,000 units this year, or maybe production builders do it. 3,200 units is their goal. It is not a unit. It's a home. It's where somebody raises their family. It's where somebody retires. It's where somebody lives life. And I refuse to call it a unit. And I don't know whoever came up with that, but they need to stop calling it that. There's my Matthew plug for the day. You see, I get passionate about that one. It is not a unit. It's a home. And I build homes, not units. So that would be my thing, is to try to keep that passion alive. What made building so great for us for so many years, for so long, was that people took pride in their work. They were proud of the home that they owned. As a builder, you were proud of the home that you built. In some ways, because we've gotten so money hungry and so business hungry, that I think we've lost a little sight of that. And I would love to see if we could bring that back. And I do think it's actually going to come back. I think as fewer homes are built, maybe more value is placed on the ones that are built.
I think there's going to be an appreciation for craftsmanship. And like, to put it in context, I've got a 2001 Miata. We call it Little Putt Putt, that I bought my wife. It was like 20 years ago. And we just put a new rag top on it 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It needs to be adjusted. Try finding somebody that knows how to stitch, that knows how to reupholster. And there is a guy, fortunately, like, I live on the corner of Lost and Nowhere. So I'm 2 hours north of the major urban center. And that's all he does. And he's been doing it for the past 40 years. So he can stitch anything. He can put tops on. That's what he does. And he told me, I've been doing this now, Michael, for 40 years. I'm ready to hang it up. I'm just tired of it. But when I do, there's nobody to fill my shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So when I put that in context of construction and home building, I have to believe that if you're doing it for the right reasons and you actually take pride in what you do, as opposed to, I'm just doing this to make a buck. There's easier ways to make a buck with less
Right.
liability, less heartache. But I think there's something, and again, I'm looking at you, Matthew, thinking this is the type of guy you are. You've got your kids in the car and you're driving, downtown Houston, and you look at this big, 70-story tower. Kids, daddy used to be a civil engineer. Well, you can't see the cubicle from here, but trust me, 10 down, that was me. Or you're driving down a road in Montgomery, and there's a home that you built, and you see the families outside playing. You can smell the barbecue cooking. I got to believe that your heart just sings when you look over your kids and say, we did that. Your dad
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, my kids know the stories. A lot of times you're dead on. My kids know some of the stories, and let's face it, Sundays after church are a lot of times the days that are the quietest for me because we're doing stuff around the house and as a family. And occasionally I need to run to a job site, not because I have to be there, but because I want to go walk in without my phone going off, without talking to 30 people in the process, without doing like my typical Monday through Friday. I just want to go enjoy it. And I love it because my kids do get to see some of that. We're in the car together and they think it's cool. Dad builds these things. I mean, now I have a 9-year-old, that's my youngest. And in her mind, I built every house that's ever built. And so we constantly have to remind her that no, daddy didn't build that one. And I also stress the importance of teams with my kids. And I think that's a value that I hope more people, and I do think they're better. I've always said I prided myself that people don't work for me, they work with me. I may be at the end of the day making some ultimate decisions on some stuff, but as a team, that's it. We win as a team and lose as a team. And I think it's really critical to maintain that. And here I am 16 plus years in, and I still feel like I've maintained that mentality. I constantly go to them and say, "Hey, let me run this idea by you. What do you guys think?" And if you've been around me long enough, my skin's pretty thick. You can tell me exactly what you're thinking. I've got a few in there that the words that come out of their mouths, well, they need that book more than I do some days. We have that relationship, but that's what, that's what makes it fun. And I think that's what homeowners even pick up on when they meet with us. There's a synergy here and excitement about what we're doing that you kind of just want to be a part of, I think, if you're a homeowner.
Yeah. Let's do this. I want to give you the opportunity to score some biscuit points with Chris Lyons, president of Texas Association Builders, and Scott Norman. What would be in your, let's say, top 5 reasons why a builder needs to be a part of the association?
Gosh, we don't have enough time in the day for this one. There's no doubt in my mind, more than anything, the camaraderie. This is not an easy business. You just said it a minute ago. There's a lot better things you can do for a lot more money and a lot less liability. When you think about warranting a home for 6 to 10 years, that's what everybody's kind of on right now. You think about what you're getting paid and what it's worth 6 to 10 years from now, because that's how long you're maintaining that liability side. So certainly there are better ways to go. However, nothing in my mind fulfills you quite like this at times. And that doesn't mean it doesn't come without its challenges. The regulatory environments are insane right now. The political side of what we do is something that most people do not understand. One of the things, our number one goal behind our builders associations is actually advocacy. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people actually don't understand that when we're fighting, we're not just fighting for builders, we're fighting for all homeowners. It's the cost of living and it's the cost of homes. It has been a struggle. 23% right now, and it's estimated 23% of your home cost is tied up in regulation, and that's government regulation. So I know everybody, eventually they throw something at me going, oh, there's just no way that could be. Yeah, when you start looking at developing a piece of property, if I told you all the environmental studies, the phase 1s, phase 2s, the TCEQ requirements, that's Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, EPA gets involved, God help you if you have wetlands on your property, so on and so forth. The amount of surveys, the amount of things we have to do from a lending standpoint. I mean, all the stars have to align. And that's just on the development side. The amount of fees, the impact fees, the rollback taxes. People don't realize when we buy raw land to develop, we're paying rollback taxes for the last 3 to 5 years, depending on what county you're in. And what that means is when I change the use of that property, they're going to go back to 3 to 5 years and I have to pay the difference in the taxes they would have gotten on that property because I changed uses. It's expensive. It's expensive. It's a lot of red tape. It's obnoxiously annoying at times to really sit and deal with politicians who are just trying to get your vote. And here we are as builders and developers going, guys, we're trying, but we're not making a ton of money off this. The buyer doesn't see that. He goes, well, you bought that place for 40,000 an acre. Now you're selling it for 80. Well, it took me 2 years to get here. So I've got to account for all that. The headaches that are involved, it does. And so what all that's doing is making this impossible for people. So by having a group of people like Texas Association of Builders, I can go to them and go, guys, I've not done this one before. How have you done this one? How did you do? What strategies did you use? And just a resource alone, it's worth going. Number two, the advocacy side, learning how to go to our state capital or your local municipality and not necessarily argue or fight. I hate that word, but really beg our case for, hey, here, Mr. Politician, when you're voting on this, just understand what you're actually voting on. You're talking about making that house $5,000 more expensive, which to you, maybe is not a lot of money, but to somebody, that's a ton of money. Maybe the difference in them getting that mortgage or not. But also when you do that and 3 other or 4 other politicians vote on their stuff, now we're $20,000 to $25,000 more expensive. We're pricing people out of the market. And we as builders aren't making any more money. So it has nothing to do with builders making money. So those are the first 2 big things. Second thing, we also have a contract package through our state. That is worth so much weight in gold. And not because it protects the builders, it protects the homeowners as well. I think it's very important that homeowners be cautious when they sign, just like Texas Real Estate Commission, TREC. When you buy a property, everybody pretty much signs a TREC contract. We know it. We all are used to it. We feel comfortable. But with custom builders, a lot of times, or any builder, you're signing with their logo on top. And I always say, if you're signing anything, whether you're buying a car, a house, I don't care what you're buying, groceries, if it's got their logo on top, get nervous because that is tailor-made to them. Where we use the Texas Association of Builders contract package, and that is a boilerplate, if you will, but it does help protect us. It also adapts every 2 years when legislative things are changing. It helps to protect everybody again because they are ever changing. There are so many reasons to be involved in Texas Association of Builders. I can't imagine a world that a builder wouldn't want to be for the lowest price that it is. I mean, it's like $1,000 a year. I just can't imagine for the life of me why you wouldn't want to be. You alluded to Chris Lyons. My goodness, like what an incredible guy, but also an incredible builder. Why wouldn't you want to learn from that?
And he would be a phone call away. That's
Yeah.
the thing that gets me. When you talk about advocacy is one, but the fact that you can get together with guys that have done it before you. So way back when I used to fight, my coach would say, "Hey, Michael, it's a really novel way of blocking punches using your face. There's an easier way to do it, right?" And building is exactly the same. Like, why take the lumps when I can call up, Matthew and say, "Hey, I'm having trouble with this new insulation or whatever it is." And you could say, "Oh yeah, we did that. We don't use it anymore. Try this instead."
Yeah.
Heartache and grief. And just one more point that you mentioned there. Scott shared the statistic for every $1,000 increase in price, 22,000 Texans are put out of the market.
Yeah.
1,000 to 22,000, just a crazy number.
So
lane
when
change.
you extrapolate that out to 5,000 even, there's 100,000 people right there that didn't get approved for their mortgage.
Oh, nuts, man. I'm going to this is called a rapid fire, where I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want you to think about it. Pretend you got a burr up your ass. First thing that comes to your mind when I ask the question, finish off the sentence.
Okay.
Ready?
I'm game. Let's do it.
Production builders get into trouble when they
Only think about costs.
fastest way to destroy margin is
Focus solely on cost.
builders who scale successfully all have this in common.
Customer service or experience.
One thing builders ignore that matters more than anything they think.
Livability of a home.
One hard truth builders need to hear is
Your trades are people too. They're still somebody's husbands, fathers, wives, whatever. They're still people too.
okay, adjust your ass in your saddle there. This part's easy. When I finally get that rare hour to myself, the thing I enjoy doing the most is,
Oh, that's easy. Team roping.
there you go. One place that helps me reset, reflect is
Running.
running. Okay.
Yeah.
A book,
That'd be one of the shops.
movie, or a quote that stayed with me longer than expected is,
What It Takes to Be Number One by Vince Lombardi. The whole speech.
once somebody gets to know me, they'd be really surprised to discover,
I'm a 3-time Ironman and did triathlons for 9 years.
holy jumping, man, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Last one. What a thoughtful gift. As I unwrapped the package to my delight, I found a
Handwritten note.
nice. I'm going to wrap this up with one more question, and this ties into you being a Christian. And it's something that I wish doesn't happen for many, 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 emphasis on many, many, many years. But I want you to imagine for a moment, Matthew, you wake up and you're dead. And you're thinking, day doesn't get worse than this. And next thing you know, you're in line. Big sign says St. Peter's Gate. And you look down and there's a bunch of guys that you recognize and you're thinking, what the hell are they doing here? Well, that's a different story altogether. You look over and there's St. Peter and he's holding an iPad and he's kind of flicking through and then he points at you. He says, young man, come over here. Now you're standing beside St. Peter and you look at his iPad and you realize he's going through vignettes of your life. He's going through, he's kind of laughing, kind of frowns at this one, kind of laughing. And then he looks you right in the eye, Matthew, and he says, not today. Matthew, not today. There's something you haven't done yet. What's that something?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. That's a tough one. Something I haven't done today. I probably haven't just loved on those that have loved on me for so long enough. I will admit, it's so hard. You get pulled in so many directions sometimes just to stop and smell the roses. My personality is go, go, go. And sometimes I just need to learn to stop and smell the roses.
There you go, my friend. Matthew, I want to say thank you for taking time out. Anything that we haven't covered that you want to touch on?
No, I think if somebody's crazy enough to get it this far, hopefully they got something out of it.
Well, they probably want to see how you're going to top the dress on a saddle on a horse.
Well, hey, listen, I'm just thankful we didn't have social media 15 years ago when it all started or when I was growing up. We're safe now.
Oh, man. There was I'm trying to think of the quote. I dream of the days of slower sunsets, faster horses, slower women, and longer sunsets. I think that was Gene Autry said that. So I wish that to you, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. I certainly enjoyed this.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.